The smile in the mirror. A young woman notices that when she looks in the mirror, her reflection takes a few seconds to copy her movements. When the reflection begins to smile without her doing so, she knows something is very wrong, and it's not just an illusion. That I sat at the small kitchen table of the Victorian house, looking out the window at the sun's rays filtering through the trees in the garden. The light seemed to dance on the surface of the table, but my heart was heavy. Ever since I arrived, an unsettling feeling had been gnawing at me. The echo of my footsteps blended with the silence of the house, and I couldn't shake the memory of the mirror I had found in the living room. The hesitant reflection was still etched in my mind, as if it had a life of its own. "Clara, are you okay?" Lucia's voice pulled me from my thoughts. She was sitting across from me, leaning in to examine my face. The enthusiasm in her eyes usually calmed me, but now it only heightened my unease. I don't know, Lucia. It's the house. There's something strange here, I murmured, looking away. Looking at Lucia always reminded me that I needed to be strong, but in that moment, vulnerability hit me like a wave. "Strange how?" she asked, crossing her arms, her genuine curiosity making me hesitate. "You can tell me. I'm your friend, Clara. You can trust me." I took a deep breath. What I was about to share felt so insane. "It's about the mirror." "Oh, the mirror," Lucia interrupted, her eyes sparkling. "You have to tell me everything. What happened?" I looked down at the table, feeling a rush of heat from embarrassment. I looked at it, and my reflection hesitated. For a moment, it seemed like it wasn't mimicking me but rather watching me. Watching? How intriguing. "You must tell me more, Clara. What did you feel?" Lucia was now captivated, leaning in closer. "It was weird, Lucia. I felt a chill run down my spine. And then, when I turned away, it smiled. A sinister smile. The memory of its smile sent a shiver down my spine. I know it sounds crazy, but I feel like something's wrong." Lucia smiled, but it wasn't an ordinary smile. It was the smile of someone about to embark on an adventure. "You're not crazy, Clara. This is simply fascinating. We need to investigate the history of the house and the former owner. There might be an explanation for all of this. And what if it's something dangerous?" I asked, hesitating. The thought of investigating only made my heart race more. But Lucia's curiosity was contagious. "Dangerous or not, I want to know more. Let's go to the library. We might find something about the former owner." "I'm sure she had an incredible story," Lucia replied, her determination shining in her eyes. "Okay, let's go. But if I feel like this is putting us in danger, I want to stop immediately." "Agreed," Lucia responded, getting up excitedly. "Now, let's get ready. It could be a long journey." As we headed to the library, the atmosphere of the house seemed to shift. The walls felt like they were whispering secrets I couldn't quite hear. I wondered if the mirror had something to do with it. In the local library, the light was soft and welcoming, but I couldn't shake the feeling of apprehension. Lucia was busy at the shelves, pulling out books and flipping through them with enthusiasm. Meanwhile, I felt like I was about to uncover something I shouldn't know. "Look at this!" Lucia exclaimed, holding up a dusty book that seemed to have been forgotten for decades. "Here's a chapter about the former owner of the house." "Let me see," she began reading aloud, her voice echoing in the silent room. The former owner of the house, Evelyn, was a renowned artist known for her impressionist works. However, her mysterious disappearance left a trail of speculation. It is said that her last exhibition was marked by strange events and that she was obsessed with a ritual that could bring her paintings to life. "Ritual?" I interrupted, the word reverberating in my mind. "What else does it say?" It seemed she believed she could capture the essence of people in her paintings by using a special mirror. It was believed that by looking into the mirror while painting, she could trap the souls of her models. Something went wrong, and she disappeared without a trace since then. With each word Lucia spoke, my heart raced. Is this what's happening to me? I asked, my voice trembling. Do you think the mirror, Clara? Calm down. This is just a possibility. We need to investigate further to know if this is really true, Lucia said, placing her hand on my arm. But it might be the key to understanding what's happening. And what if the ritual involves sacrifice? The thought haunted me. What if I'm in danger? Lucia looked into my eyes, and for the first time, I saw concern on her face. Maybe we should be cautious. But we can't just ignore this. We need to know more about Evelyn and what happened to her. The feeling of dread intensified, but Lucia's determination was infectious. Okay, let's keep researching. I don't want to become a victim like her. Fear mingled with curiosity, and the desire to understand what was happening pushed me forward. We returned to our focus on the books, flipping through pages in search of more information. Each discovery seemed to weave a web of mystery around us. The idea that Evelyn might have captured souls in a mirror made me feel as if we were being watched, as if the house were alive, breathing its secrets. Finally, we found an old diary, its yellowed pages worn and tattered. Look at this. Lucia said, her voice filled with excitement. This could be Evelyn's diary. We approached the table, and Lucia began to read aloud. Today, I performed the ritual again. I felt a deep connection between myself and the art. The colors dance in my mind, and the mirror calls to me. I need to delve deeper. There is something in the souls that inspires me. She was completely obsessed, I murmured, feeling a shiver crawl down my spine. This isn't normal, Lucia. She was seeking something she shouldn't have, Lucia agreed, her eyes sparkling with the thrill of discovery. But what exactly was she trying to achieve? I don't know, but things are starting to get weirder for me, I replied, already thinking about the implications. What if the mirror is also calling to me? What if, in some way, I'm connecting to what happened to her? Lucia stopped reading and looked at me, her expression serious. Clara, we need to be careful. We can't let this consume us. We need to figure out how it all connects. What can we do to help you break free from this influence? I don't know, I confessed, feeling the weight of uncertainty. But I need to understand. It's like something is pulling me toward the mirror. And if it is indeed consuming my essence, like Evelyn did with the other souls, we'll figure it out together, Lucia said with determination. And we won't stop until we understand the truth. You're not alone in this. That assertion brought me some relief, but the feeling of discomfort lingered. The discoveries about Evelyn and her art were beginning to intertwine with my own life in a way I couldn't ignore. What was really happening with my reflection? And why did I feel like the mirror was the key to unraveling not just the mysteries of the house, but of myself? As we prepared to leave the library, an unsettling thought struck me. I was about to embark on a journey that could change everything. And deep down, I knew that something more was at stake than just Evelyn's story. Something that pertained to my own essence and the struggle I had yet to face. The pressure I felt in my artistic career was becoming unbearable. Hashtag each brushstroke I attempted to make on the canvas felt like an even heavier weight pressing down on my shoulders. The creative blocks that used to be fleeting were now becoming a dense cloud that followed me with every step. And the more I tried to shake them off, the stronger the feeling grew that I had lost something fundamental within myself. Amidst this restlessness, the mirror became my obsession. I still remembered the first time I came across it. The hesitant reflection, the sinister smile. It was as if it were aware of me, as if it knew more about me than I did myself. It wasn't just an object, it seemed to be a portal to something deeper, darker. As the days passed, I found myself drawn to it, like a moth to a flame, unaware of the danger lurking in the shadows. That particular night, I was alone in the studio, the dim lights casting dancing shadows on the walls. A storm was approaching, and the sound of rain hitting the windows was almost hypnotic. I sat before the blank canvas, my brush in hand, trying to concentrate. But every time I glanced at the mirror, something within me stirred. The reflection seemed to be watching me. It was as if it were smiling, but not in a way that brought me comfort. It was a smile that spoke of secrets kept, of something I still couldn't understand. "Why can't you leave me alone?" I murmured to myself, staring into the mirror. The image looking back at me seemed to almost mock my frustration. "You're not real, you're just glass and light." But even as I spoke, I felt that there was something more. The reflection was moving strangely, as if it were trying to communicate. I blinked, trying to grasp what was happening. The smile widened, and I saw my own lips curve back in a gesture that wasn't mine. It was as if the mirror were taking possession of me, making me dance to its rhythm. "Hey! What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. The mirror didn't answer, but the expression on my reflection grew more intense, more alive. I felt a connection that left me unsettled, yet a part of me was fascinated. What was this phenomenon? What did it mean? The night dragged on as I struggled against the temptation to lose myself even further in that unsettling image. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my agitated spirit. "You're just a reflection," I repeated to myself, but my conviction was beginning to waver. What was happening? Was it a side effect of stress? Or was there something genuinely supernatural in the air? In the days that followed, the presence of the mirror in my life became increasingly undeniable. Every time I tried to paint, a part of me turned to observe the reflection. It was as if it were hypnotizing me, drawing me into an abyss I couldn't understand. Those disturbing images that emerged on the canvas were not just representations of what I felt, they were portraits of my reflection, but distorted in ways I had never thought possible. They were expressions of pain, frustration, a struggle within that I hadn't realized I was fighting. "Why don't you stop looking at me?" I said aloud one night, staring fixedly at the mirror. There was no one there, only me and the image looking back. "You can't help me. I need inspiration, not a specter watching me." The reflection smiled once more, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was an expression that seemed almost empathetic, yet there was something predatory about it. Am I going insane? What was I really seeing? I needed answers, but I wasn't sure where to look. Over the course of a week, the nights became a cycle of frustrated attempts to create something new. The canvases remained blank, and I felt more lost with each passing day. The mirror became a constant presence, a reminder of what I couldn't reach. It was as if the reflection itself was challenging me, forcing me to confront not only my insecurities but also the artist I had ceased to be. "Why don't you reveal yourself?" I said one night, rage spilling over. "If you're so special, if you have something to show me, then show it. I'm ready." The reflection hesitated for a moment, then began gesturing, as if trying to convey a message. I stood frozen, breath caught in my throat. "What are you trying to say?" I asked, a mix of curiosity and fear. There was no answer, but the expression on my reflection's face began to change. The smile now seemed like an invitation, as if it were promising something I longed for in my heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought that the mirror might hold the key to my inspiration hammered in my mind. So, on a whim, I decided I had to try. I set up an easel in front of the mirror and prepared my paints. What I was about to do was risky, but the need to create something new outweighed my fear. With the brush in hand, I began to paint while looking directly into the mirror. The reflection was there, watching me closely, and I could feel a pulsing energy in the air. My hands moved almost automatically, and soon the colors began to take shape on the canvas. But as I focused, I noticed my reflection moving strangely. It gestured, as if trying to communicate something. "What are you doing?" I asked, confused. "Why can't you stay still?" The smile on my reflection widened, and I realized that the more I tried to ignore it, the more active it became. It was as if it were trying to distract me, a cruel trick pulling me away from my own art. The feeling of disconnection washed over me, and frustration began to build in my chest. "Stop distracting me!" I shouted, but the only response was a playful look, as if the reflection were enjoying my despair. Rage consumed me, and I slammed the brush onto the canvas, splattering the painting with an explosion of color. The reflection laughed, and I felt lost in a sea of conflicting emotions. "You're not real!" I screamed, trying to convince myself. "You're just an illusion." But deep down, a part of me knew that this illusion was becoming increasingly real. The emotions I saw in my reflection were more than just a physical expression. They were a reflection of what I felt internally, and that revelation was terrifying. What did the mirror truly want from me? What did it represent? As the night wore on, I felt trapped in a cycle of frustration and self-discovery. What I sought was not just inspiration, it was an inner struggle I hadn't realized I was waging. And, deep down, I recognized that the mirror wasn't the enemy, but a part of me I had chosen to ignore. That night, as the storm raged outside, I looked at the mirror once more, trying to understand what it wanted to show me. And for a brief moment, I realized that the answer was right in front of me. It was time to confront not only what was reflected in that glass but also what I had become. The local library was a place that had always fascinated me. The walls were lined with tall shelves filled with ancient books that exuded the scent of aged paper and untold stories. Lucia and I were there in search of answers, but also out of the curiosity that had always united us. I couldn't shake off what I had seen in the mirror, the hesitation in my reflection, the sinister smile watching me as I turned, all of it left me unsettled. "Look here, Clara!" Lucia exclaimed, pulling me out of my thoughts. She was standing in front of a table where a thick leather-bound book rested. Hashtag, 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 this book seems to have information about the former owner of the house. I moved closer, my heart racing. The book was dusty, as if it hadn't been opened in years. Lucia carefully flipped through the pages, her eyes shining with excitement. Evelyn. Evelyn Carter. They say she was an incredible artist, but also very reclusive. Reclusive? I asked, curious. Why did she isolate herself? Let me see. Lucia read aloud. She spent most of her life in her home, creating works that challenged reality. Many say she became obsessed with a specific project, something about capturing the essence of people in her paintings. A chill ran down my spine. The story sounded familiar, echoing my own creative process. What else does it say? Oh, here. She turned another page. It says that at some point, she started using mirrors in her works. There were rumors that, in a ritual, she trapped souls within them to feed her art. That's disturbing. I murmured, the weight of the words settling over me. Do you believe that? Maybe. Lucia looked at me, her eyes sparkling with possibility. If there's something supernatural tied to this, we need to find out more. It could be that what's happening with you is connected to all of this. You mean my reflection could have something to do with the souls Evelyn trapped? I asked, fear growing inside me. It's a possibility. Lucia replied, her expression serious. Let's keep searching. We returned to flipping through the book, each page revealing more about Evelyn's life. With every new discovery, I felt increasingly intertwined with her story. The works she created, the whispers I heard, everything seemed to intertwine in a dark and intriguing way. Look at this, Clara. Lucia suddenly said, her eyes alight. Here it talks about the last painting she did before disappearing. It says it was a self-portrait, but no one ever saw it. The painting was described as disturbing and enigmatic. Disturbing and enigmatic. I repeated, my heart racing. Like my reflection. Exactly. Lucia agreed. We have to find out where that painting is. It could give us clues about what happened to her and maybe even what's happening to you. Feeling a surge of determination, I stood up, resolved to unravel that mystery. Let's go to the art gallery in town. They should have more information about Evelyn's works. Lucia nodded, visibly excited. Yes. And if we're lucky, maybe we'll find some of her pieces on display. As we left the library, my mind buzzed with possibilities. On the way to the gallery, I couldn't stop thinking about the connections between Evelyn's art and what I was experiencing. That feeling of disconnection from my own reflection, the sinister smile, all of that could be an echo of her life. I might be living what she lived. When we arrived at the gallery, I was greeted by an atmosphere that resonated with creativity and emotion. The walls were adorned with works from various artists, but my focus was on Evelyn. I walked toward a room showcasing contemporary pieces, but soon I noticed a painting that caught my attention. Lucia, look! I called, pointing to a piece. It was a work that seemed vibrant and alive, yet it possessed a dark and unsettling aura. This style is so similar to what I've been doing. Lucia approached, admiring the painting. That's true. But, Clara, this piece has something more. Look at the eyes of the figure. They seem empty, as if there's no one there. I moved closer, absorbing every detail. It's as if the artist was trying to capture something that couldn't be seen. A lost essence. And if that essence is what's trapped in the mirrors? Lucia suggested, her voice low. What did Evelyn do to create this piece? What did she sacrifice? A shiver ran down my spine. I don't know if I want to find that out. We need to, Clara. This could be the key to understanding what's happening with you and your reflection. I agreed, albeit hesitantly. I approached the curator of the gallery, an elderly man who seemed deeply familiar with Evelyn's works. Excuse me, sir. Could you tell us more about Evelyn Carter's last piece? The painting she made before disappearing? He looked at us, his eyes shining with a mix of nostalgia and sadness. Ah, Evelyn, a brilliant artist, but she lost herself in her own quest for something deeper. The last painting she created was a self-portrait, but no one ever had the chance to see it. It was kept private, and after her disappearance, it simply vanished. Vanished? I repeated, intrigued. Do you know where it might be now? Rumors say the painting was taken to a private collection, but no one knows for sure. The truth is, after her disappearance, many started to believe her works were cursed. His words echoed in my mind. Cursed. Yes, he continued, they say the souls she trapped in her mirrors followed her, and her self-portrait was the climax of her obsession. A representation of herself, but also of all the souls she had captured. A wave of panic washed over me. Are you saying she became one of them? Perhaps, he replied, looking at us with a mixture of sadness and understanding. Her art wasn't just a creative expression, but a reflection of her very soul. What she did may have cost far more than we can imagine. I stepped back, my heart heavy. What if I'm following the same path? What if my reflection is also capturing something within me? Lucia grabbed my arm, her presence comforting. We need to uncover the truth, Clara. If Evelyn really did trap souls in her mirrors, we need to understand how that affects you. And if your reflection is trying to communicate, we need to listen. Amidst this turmoil, I decided I could no longer ignore what was happening. I needed to confront my reflection and discover the truth, not just about Evelyn, but about myself. And if necessary, face whatever was trapped within that glass surface. Let's go back to the house, I said, determination in my voice. We need to investigate more about the mirror and how it relates to Evelyn's art. Lucia nodded, her eyes filled with support. We're in this together, Clara. And we'll uncover the truth, no matter what happens. That decision resonated within me, like an echo of courage. I was about to delve into a mystery that could very well change the course of my life and, perhaps, free not only myself but the souls that had been trapped within that mirror. The night was quiet, the only sound the brush gliding across the canvas, breaking the calm of the atmosphere. The soft light from the lamp next to me illuminated the living room, but the darkness seemed to concentrate on a single point, the mirror. With every movement I made, it felt as if a pair of invisible eyes were watching me, assessing every trait of my being. Since moving into that Victorian house, the mirror had become a constant presence in my life, and not exactly in a way I would have preferred. A chill ran down my spine as I tried to focus on my painting. The reflection in the mirror seemed to grow more vibrant each day. It was as if it were alive, pulsating with an energy I could barely comprehend. I looked at it, and for a moment, the connection I felt left me uneasy. It was a sensation that something more was there, something that called to me, that drew me in. ####, Mom, I need you, I murmured to myself, seeking comfort in the idea that, even from afar, she would always be by my side. But in that moment, the only echo I received was that of silence. Loneliness enveloped me like a heavy cloak. I took a deep breath and tried to focus again on the blank screen in front of me. The creative block that haunted me was becoming increasingly agonizing. The colors that once danced in my mind now seemed faded, lifeless. I couldn't shake the feeling that the mirror had something to do with it, as if it were sucking away my essence, my inspiration. "What's your problem?" I murmured to the mirror, feeling a wave of anger and frustration. "Why won't you leave me alone?" But instead of an answer, I was met only with the echo of silence. I looked once more at my reflection and, to my horror, it was smiling. A smile that wasn't mine. My heart raced, and a wave of panic washed over me. The reflection hesitated for a moment, but soon resumed its smile, as if it were reveling in my distress. "Stop it," I said, almost in a whisper. "You're not real." But the truth was, the more I spoke, the more the line between what was real and what was illusion seemed to blur. The smile on my reflection widened, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It moved in an odd way, as if dancing to a rhythm that only it could hear. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or if something truly supernatural was happening. "Clara, are you okay?" Lucia's voice echoed in my mind, bringing me back to reality. "You're not alone in this. We'll figure out what's going on." The idea of sharing what I was going through made me hesitate. What if she thought I was crazy? What would I say? "Hey, Lucia, I'm having issues with my reflection that seems to have a mind of its own." No, that wouldn't work. But the need to vent was becoming more urgent. In a moment of impulse, I decided I needed to try something different. I would take my painting supplies and attempt to draw while looking at the mirror. If the reflection wanted to communicate, I was willing to listen. My heart raced as I organized my paints and grabbed a new brush. I focused on the canvas, but with every stroke, the reflection seemed more alive. It gestured as if trying to tell me something. I looked directly at it, and for a moment, I felt a connection, an exchange of energy. It was as if it were guiding me, encouraging me to let go and express myself more freely. "Come on," I told myself, "you can do this." But as I painted, frustration began to build. The reflection continued to smile, even as I struggled to find beauty in the colors I mixed on the canvas. It felt as if it were mocking me, as if it were enjoying my struggle. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, staring at the mirror. "What do you want from me?" And then, in a moment of despair, I dropped the brush and slammed my hand on the surface of the table. Then, the reflection began to act even stranger. It leaned forward, gesturing frantically as if trying to communicate. The sinister smile widened, and I felt my heart race. A wave of panic consumed me. "Enough!" I yelled, but it continued to watch me, its penetrating gaze making me feel as if I were being stripped bare. "I don't know what you are, but you won't control me." But the truth was, the more I tried to fight against the influence of the mirror, the more it seemed to intensify. I was in a state of desperation, and the creative block was becoming unbearable. The idea of confronting the mirror became an undeniable necessity. I needed to know what was happening, I needed to understand why it was tormenting me. "Calm down, Clara," I murmured, trying to steady my racing heart. "You can do this." I stood up hesitantly and walked towards the mirror. It felt as though time had stopped, and each step I took was heavy, as if I were crossing an invisible force field. When I got close, I could see every detail of my reflection. It wasn't just a mirror, it was a doorway to something much deeper. I tried to concentrate, but the sensation that something was about to happen was palpable. I forced myself to face my reflection, and then it smiled again. But it wasn't a joyful smile, it was a smile that suggested it knew something I didn't. "Are you listening to me?" I asked, my voice fading to almost a whisper. And then, to my surprise, the reflection made a gesture, as if it wanted to escape the glass. The image distorted, and for a moment, I could see something beyond my own reflection. It was a vision of shadows, of lost souls, a crowd of faces trapped there, just like me. "No. No!" I screamed, absolute terror consuming me. "You won't take me." Despair overwhelmed me, and I quickly stepped away from the mirror. What I had seen was horrifying. It felt as though I were on the edge of an abyss, about to fall into a world of darkness. But as I recoiled, the reflection continued to smile, its expression now filled with a chilling calm. It seemed stronger, more dominant. And I, somehow, felt powerless before it. "Clara, you don't need to be afraid," it seemed to say, though its mouth didn't move. "I'm just a part of you. Accept me, and you'll find the freedom you so desire." What was that? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The reflection was trying to convince me to accept it, to surrender to it. But instead, I needed to fight. I didn't know how, but I had to resist. "You're not me," I said, my voice trembling. "You won't control me." But the reflection, in response, merely smiled, and that smile filled me with more dread than ever. I knew I had to confront it, and that the battle between us was just beginning. Night had fallen over the Victorian house like a heavy shroud, and the silence was almost deafening. As the winds howled outside, Lucia and I found ourselves once again in the local library, surrounded by ancient books that seemed to breathe the history of those walls. The smell of aged paper and mold hung heavily in the air, and the soft light of the table lamp cast dancing shadows on the dusty volumes. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had discovered. Evelyn, the former owner of the house, wasn't just an artist, she was involved in something much darker. "Clara, look at this!" Lucia exclaimed, her voice echoing through the room. She was holding a battered diary, its yellowed and worn pages crinkling in her hands. The gleam in her eyes was contagious, but I didn't share the same enthusiasm. "This diary seems to belong to Evelyn. Let's see what she wrote." As I approached, I could see the cursive letters in a shade of ink that had faded over time. The diary was filled with scribbles and notes, but one passage immediately caught my attention. "To capture the essence of beauty, I must sacrifice part of myself. The souls trapped in the mirrors are my true museum. By imprisoning them, I create. And in creating, I become eternal." "This is insane," I murmured, feeling a shiver run down my spine. Did she really trap souls? This doesn't make sense. How can someone be so selfish? Lucia quickly flipped through the pages, her face illuminated by the excitement of discovery. "Look here, Clara. There's a mention of a ritual. It says that the artist should make a sacrifice for every masterpiece she wished to create. And what did she capture? It was the essence of whoever looked into the mirror. Sacrifice? The word echoed ominously in my mind. Hashtag, 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 what did this mean for me? For what I had experienced. The creative tensions I felt, the blockage that seemed to consume me, all of this could be connected to this curse. "This must be a metaphor," Lucia said, but her voice betrayed a hint of hesitation. Or maybe not. Have you thought that what's happening to you might be related to this? Your reflection, it could be trying to consume your essence. I shook my head, though the idea unsettled me. No, that's crazy. I'm just, me. I can't be a muse or a trapped soul, Lucia. I'm an artist, and this is just a creative block. But what if it's not just that? She looked at me, her eyes like windows to a truth I didn't want to face. If Evelyn's stories are real, it means you could be in danger. What happened to her could very well happen to you. I can't think like that, I replied, trying to convince myself. I need to focus on my art. Maybe if I concentrate, this will go away. I just need a little more time. Lucia sighed, clearly worried. Clara, you can't ignore what's happening. This isn't just a matter of creativity. You need to understand the connection between artists and their works. Evelyn made a pact, and now you might be caught in it too. And what do you suggest I do? Destroy the mirror. Talk to it. Hey, Mr. Mirror, please don't consume my essence. That doesn't sound very rational, Lucia. Frustration began to take over, and the pressure of everything happening seemed to pile up. I don't know. Lucia exclaimed, raising her hands in a gesture of surrender. But we need to find out more. Look, here in this passage, it talks about a place where she performed rituals. We can investigate. Maybe we'll find more answers there. And what if we find something we don't want to know? I said, trying to hold my ground. What if this ends up harming me in some way? Sometimes, the truth is the only thing that can save us, Lucia said, her voice soft but firm. I'll be with you, Clara. No matter what happens. That gave me a bit of courage, and I decided I couldn't let fear win. Okay, let's find out what else we can discover. But we need to be careful. Whatever Evelyn did, we can't let ourselves get swept up in it. The library seemed to come alive as we lost ourselves in the pages of the diary, each word revealing a little more about the artist and her dark connection to the mirror. As the night deepened, the glow of the city's lights outside became a faint shimmer, almost like a reminder that the real world still existed. Finally, Lucia found another passage that mentioned a specific place. Here. She mentions a sanctuary of reflection in the nearby forest. It says that's where the rituals were performed. We need to go there. A knot formed in my stomach at the thought of what we might find. Do you really think this will help us understand what's happening? What if it's dangerous? We need to know, Clara. We can't just sit here doing nothing, Lucia insisted. The determined look on her face made me feel a bit more secure. The next morning, we decided we would head to the sanctuary. The forest looked dense and threatening, and as we ventured deeper, a sense of oppression began to envelop me. The air was thick with humidity and the scent of wet earth, and sunlight barely managed to penetrate the treetops. It's here, Lucia murmured, stopping in front of a clearing where there was an ancient structure covered in moss. Looking around, I noticed there were remnants of broken mirrors and objects that seemed to have belonged to other artists. This is disturbing, I said, observing the glass shards reflecting light in a distorted manner. What happened here? Maybe we can find something that helps us, Lucia said, crouching to examine a piece of mirror. Look, this seems to be part of a ritual. As Lucia spoke, something inside me started to stir. The connection I had felt with the mirror back at the house seemed to intensify. A sense of despair and confusion wrapped around my heart as I remembered the sinister smile of my reflection. Clara! Lucia exclaimed, pulling me back to reality. Look at this. She was holding a yellowed piece of paper that looked like a sketch, and my heart raced as I saw the drawing. It was a portrait of a woman looking into a mirror, but her reflection was distorted, as if it were trapping something inside. This is me, I murmured, a chill running down my spine. She's watching me. This is a sign, Clara. We need to get out of here now. Lucia said, her urgent tone sending a shiver through me. "Wait!" I shouted, but before I could say more, a cold breeze swept through the clearing, making the leaves whisper. It felt as if something was moving in the shadows, and the heavy atmosphere seemed to close in around us. "Let's go, Clara." Lucia tugged at my arm, and I followed her, sensing that the atmosphere around us was changing. Whatever Evelyn had done, its consequences were catching up with us, and I didn't know if I could escape it. As we left the forest, a feeling of panic began to form within me. What was I really facing? What was happening to me? These questions echoed in my mind, and the truth I was about to discover could very well be the key to my salvation or my doom. When we arrived back at the house, the discomfort that had been following me felt more intense than ever. The mirror in the living room seemed to call to me, and I knew I had to confront it. But doubt and fear began to erode my determination. What was I willing to sacrifice to understand this connection? And the question that terrified me most, what would happen if I couldn't escape? The storm raged outside, and I woke up with a start, my heart racing. It was as if the Victorian house was alive, pulsing with the echoes of the wind and the rain that hammered against the windows. The sound of water hitting the glass felt like a distant call, but what truly awakened me was a whisper coming from the mirror in the living room. A familiar whisper that seemed to beckon me, as if someone were trying to communicate. I rose from the bed, my legs still a bit shaky. What's happening to me? I thought as I slowly walked toward the living room. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, illuminating the space in an almost surreal way. The framed mirror on the wall seemed to glow, as if it were waiting for me. A chill ran down my spine. Just a reflection, I tried to convince myself, but the feeling that there was something more there was undeniable. As I got closer, the whisper intensified. "Clara." The voice was soft, almost like an echo of my own thoughts. "Clara." My eyes locked onto the reflection, and for a moment, I didn't see just myself, but something deeper. The reflection hesitated, as if bracing for something. My smile faded, and a wave of anguish washed over me. "Hi?" I asked, my voice sounding strange in the silence of the house. No one answered, except for the echo of my own sound. But as I looked closer, I noticed my reflection was different. It hesitated. Just a fraction of a second, but enough for me to feel a shiver. What was happening? Was it just my mind playing tricks, or was there something real there? Then, as if it had a will of its own, my reflection smiled. It wasn't a gentle smile, but a sinister one, almost mocking. My heart sank. "What do you want from me?" Hashtag. I didn't know if I was speaking to myself or to that being staring back at me. "Clara," he repeated, and the sound of my own voice echoed again, but this time it felt more like a call, an incitement. I turned away, trying to ignore it, but there was something hypnotic in the eyes of my reflection. The tension in the air was palpable. "You know I'm here. Stop it. You're not real." I shouted, but the truth was, I wasn't so sure. What was real, after all? I was becoming increasingly confused. What was going on in my mind? Was I really going insane? The smile widened, and the reflection seemed to revel in my anguish. "You're so close, Clara. All you have to do is let go. Look at me. I am you." That assertion made me hesitate. It was true, wasn't it? It was a part of me, a part one had ignored, that I was afraid to confront. But how could I accept something so disturbing? The storm outside seemed to intensify, and I felt the sound of the rain merging with the whisper of my reflection. What was I doing in that house? This wasn't the first time I felt that discomfort, but now it seemed more intense, more uncontrollable. "No," I murmured. "I can't. I don't want to." But even so, my body seemed to move toward the mirror, as if an invisible force was pulling me in. I tried to back away, but it was as if the shadows around me were stretching, trying to pull me into that disturbing world. "Please, stop!" I cried, my voice trembling. And then, the reflection began to distort. The figure I knew twisted, forming images of faces I didn't recognize. They were faces of other victims, perhaps. I saw a woman with vacant eyes, a man in a state of despair, all trapped there, lost in a space between glass and reality. My heart raced. "What did you do to them?" I asked, no longer sure if it was a question for myself or for the reflection. "They are not so different from you. We all have our fears, Clara. We all seek freedom, but to achieve it, we must make a choice." The smile on my reflection became more disturbing as he spoke. "You are about to find your true self. You can either be liberated or lost forever." I hesitated. The truth was, I was terrified. I had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. The idea that there were other souls trapped there, just like me, was horrifying. I can't do this," I said, my voice faltering. But inside, I knew I was at a breaking point. What was I truly willing to sacrifice to be free? What did that mean for me? "You've already made the choice, Clara. Now, all you need to do is accept." The tone of my reflection was soft, seductive. He extended his hand as if wanting to pull me in. "Come. I am you. And you are me." The environment around me began to swirl, and the images of the faces became more intense, more real. I felt a pulsating energy emanating from the mirror, a force that attracted me with an almost irresistible pull. It was as if I was being drawn into the reflective surface, and the thought of losing myself in that turmoil was more than I could bear. "Please, leave me alone." I screamed, but my voice echoed only into the void. The reflection began to distort further, revealing a new layer of horror. Faces, shadows, and the feeling that I was about to become part of that storm. Every part of me wanted to run, but something, a darker and more tempting part, wanted to stay. "Clara, there is no escaping me. I am your truth." The voice enveloped me like a thick fog. "Embrace who you are. Accept that you have always been part of this place." The storm outside intensified, and I knew I was at a crucial moment. The struggle between reason and emotion was unfolding within me. "I can't do this." I was shouting now, but it felt as if the words were being absorbed by the darkness around me. The whisper grew more insistent, more intense. "You can, Clara. You just need to take the first step." The words echoed in my mind, and I knew I couldn't ignore it. What I was seeing was a distorted reflection of my own soul, and the truth was, I was afraid to face that part of myself. "Enough!" I shouted, feeling adrenaline surge through my veins. "I am not you." The declaration felt like a spell, and for a moment, the reflection hesitated. I didn't fully understand what was happening, but the certainty grew within me. I needed to free myself from that influence, from that connection that was consuming me. But as I tried to pull away, the reflection moved closer, and I realized I couldn't simply ignore it. Whatever was there needed to be confronted. The storm raged outside, but inside me, a calm began to form. I couldn't let myself be carried away by the darkness. I was not just the shadowy figure the mirror portrayed. I was more than that. So, with all the strength I could muster, I said, "I am Clara, and I choose freedom." The declaration resonated like a battle cry, and the reflection stopped abruptly. The distorted image hesitated, and then, in an instant, everything seemed to freeze. But the battle was far from over. The storm roared outside, the thunder echoing like distant screams. I stood in the living room, facing that mirror, my heart racing. Shadows danced on the walls of the Victorian house, and the moonlight barely pierced through the heavy clouds. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I looked at the polished surface, reflecting not just my image but also the nightmares that accompanied it. The mirror seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as if it were alive, and I couldn't ignore the growing feeling that something terrible was about to happen. "Clara, are you sure this is a good idea?" Lucia asked me, her voice a mix of concern and curiosity. She stood beside me, her eyes wide as she gazed at the reflection. "This mirror. It doesn't seem right. We can't just leave it here." "I know, but we have to try. If there's any chance of freeing those souls, I can't stand by," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. The thought of breaking the mirror terrified me, but I thought of the trapped souls, the former artist Evelyn, and how I might be connected to all of this. The desire to liberate them was intense, but the fear of the repercussions consumed me. Focusing, I stepped closer to the mirror. The surface of the glass seemed to ripple, as if it were trying to seduce me to enter. "Lucia, are you ready?" I asked, trying to keep determination in my voice, even though anxiety gnawed at me inside. "Yes, but... Clara, what if this is a trap? What if we're just making everything worse?" Lucia hesitated, but I could see the determination in her eyes. "We can't let fear control us," I said, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this together." With a decisive movement, I grabbed a heavy candelabrum from a nearby table. The cold metal felt solid in my hand, and I could feel my heart pounding hard. 1, 2, 3. I shouted, and with all the strength I could muster, I struck the candelabrum against the surface of the mirror. The sound of the impact was deafening, an echo reverberating through the room. But instead of shattering, the glass began to transform. The surface of the mirror started to contort, as if it were writhing in agony. The reflection that was once mine morphed into a horrific scene, myself, but with empty eyes and a sinister grin, as if my own reflection were mocking me. "Clara, what's happening?" Lucia screamed, staring in terror at what was unfolding before us. The horror in your voice made me hesitate, and for a moment, doubt washed over me. What had I done? What had I awakened? The image in the mirror began to draw closer, and I could see myself being consumed by shadows. "You can't destroy me, Clara. I'm a part of you now," my reflection said, the voice echoing in a way that didn't sound human. The smile widened, and a wave of panic enveloped me. "No. You're not me," I screamed, taking a step back. I looked at Lucia, who stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the grotesque scene. "We need to get out of here." But the reflection wouldn't let me go. "You can't escape me so easily. I am your art, your fears, your insecurities. And you need me to be whole," it whispered, and I felt a chilling wave sweep through my body. "Clara, please, we need to break the mirror. Now!" Lucia exclaimed, her voice nearly desperate. But I was trapped in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, battling against the very part of myself that was there, smiling and waiting. "If you destroy me, you destroy yourself too," my other self continued, the voice filled with hypnotic malice. "You can't deny what we are. Accept it, and you'll find freedom." I looked to Lucia, who was starting to back away, realizing the gravity of the situation. "Clara, you can't believe it. This is an illusion. But what if it's not? What if it's true?" I said, the confusion consuming me. What if I really do need it for my art? The idea of losing my connection to creativity was paralyzing. "No. You are more than that. You're an artist, not a prisoner," Lucia shouted, trying to grab my arm. Her desperation made me hesitate again. But the reflection, increasingly convincing, continued to whisper promises of power and freedom. "Look at you, Clara. You're just beginning to discover your true potential. Without me, you'll never be a real artist. You need to accept me," my reflection said, the voice now smooth and seductive. "Let me in. Let me guide you." Despair and confusion turned into a storm inside me. I didn't want to lose myself, but the idea of being a recognized artist, finally finding my voice, was tempting. What should I do? I asked, my voice trembling. You know what you need to do. Sacrifice what you think is you, and you'll find true freedom, my reflection replied, and I realized its words were wrapping around me, as if I were being pulled into an abyss. No, Clara, don't do that. Lucia screamed, pulling me back, but the connection to the mirror was strong. I looked at the distorted image in front of me, and the truth began to form in my mind. You're not my freedom, you're a prison. With one last effort, I lifted the candelabrum again. I won't be dominated by you. I shouted, and with all my strength, I struck the mirror again. The glass trembled, and a shrill scream echoed through the room, almost as if the house itself were lamenting. The surface began to crack, but it wasn't as I expected. Instead of shattering into pieces, the reflection began to fragment, revealing not just me, but also shadows of other victims. Silhouettes of lost artists, all with desperate looks, emerged from the glass. Help us, Clara, they screamed in unison, their voices mingling in a chorus of despair. No, this can't be real. I yelled, terror overtaking me. I could no longer bear it, and the only thing I wanted was to escape that nightmare. The malevolent reflection began to writhe, and I realized I was at a point of no return. You're like us now. Join us, Clara, my reflection whispered, and the temptation to accept that darkness was almost unbearable. But amid that chaos, I saw Lucia by my side, her determination still shining like a light in the darkness. Clara, you're stronger than this. Don't let it consume you. Break it. Break the mirror, she shouted, and her words echoed in my heart like a beacon of hope. With one last cry, I gathered all my strength and struck the surface of the mirror once more. The explosion of glass spread throughout the room, and the malevolent reflection disintegrated into a cloud of shadows. The sound of breaking glass echoed, and the sensation of freedom began to flood my body. Clara! Lucia shouted, and I felt a surge of hope. The mirror shattered completely, and amid the fragments, I realized I wasn't just fighting against an entity. I was battling the fears and insecurities that held me captive. As the shards fell to the ground, a wave of relief washed over me. I was no longer a prisoner of that house, that mirror, or of myself. I was free. The storm raged outside, the rain pounding hard against the windows of the old Victorian house, echoing like a distant lament. The sound seemed to blend with my own thoughts, which grew more confused and tumultuous by the moment. I found myself before the mirror, the very one that had tormented me for the past few weeks, and with each passing second, the pressure mounted. I looked at my reflection and felt a chill run down my spine. It was there, with that enigmatic smile, almost taunting, as if challenging me. You won't be able to control me, I murmured to myself, but the tremor in my voice betrayed my fear. I knew I was at a critical point. The past weeks had been a nightmare, and every time I saw myself in the mirror, I felt that something was there, something that pulled me, attracted me to it as if it wanted to consume me, waiting for a moment of weakness to drag me into its dark world. Clara, you need to decide, I thought, trying to gather courage. What I was about to do was risky. Sacrificing my essence to that reflection was a possibility I couldn't ignore. But the idea of losing myself completely, of becoming a mere shadow of who I was unbearable. I needed to fight, but how? How could I face something that seemed like an extension of myself? A distorted echo of my fears and insecurities. You're scared, aren't you? The whisper came from the mirror, the voice soft yet laden with a threatening tone. You know you can't escape me. I am you, Clara. And you can't live without me. I am not you. I am Clara, I am an artist, I am more than a reflected image. My voice was firm, but inside me, a storm of doubts and insecurities raged. The reflection smiled, a grin that seemed to spread across the glass, almost as if it were enjoying my despair. Do you really believe you can free yourself from me? I am your creativity, your desires, your frustrations. You need me, Clara. Without me, you are nothing. Enough. I shouted, my voice echoing through the room. I wanted to break that glass, to destroy what had become a prison for me. But at the same time, a part of me hesitated. What if I can't? What if I lose myself in the process? Doubt paralyzed me, and I looked at the mirror again. The reflection was there, staring back, with a gaze that seemed to penetrate my soul. You don't want to get lost, do you? But you are already lost. Look around you. Your art, your talent, your essence, it's all draining away. You can't go on like this. I will fight. I declared, feeling a wave of determination swell within me. I won't sacrifice myself for you. I am not your prisoner. But as I spoke, insecurity came rushing back. How could I fight against a part of myself? You don't have the strength you think you do. Look at you. You feel empty, uninspired. I am the only one who can give you what you need. Accept this, and you'll find freedom. No. I won't accept this. Anger surged to my head, and in a moment of impulse, I lunged toward the mirror, swinging my hand in its direction. I'm going to end this now. But the glass surface didn't yield. Instead, it seemed to pulse, a strange energy emanating from it, as if it were feeding off my frustration. You can't destroy me, Clara. I am part of you. And if you try to break me, you'll break yourself too. The reflection's smile widened, and I realized he was right. The thought of shattering the mirror could mean shattering something within me, something I wasn't ready to lose. Why are you doing this? Why can't you just leave me alone? I asked, feeling tears welling in my eyes. The internal struggle was exhausting, and I didn't know how much longer I could endure. Because you need me to live. You're so trapped in your insecurities that you can't see the truth. Accept me, and you'll find what you've always sought. His voice was soft, almost seductive, and I felt a part of me beginning to yield. I don't want to be you. I shouted, my voice now weaker. I want to be myself. But you don't know how. You're lost, Clara. You need me to find your way back. The reflection tilted its head, and its gaze seemed genuinely concerned, as if it were trying to help me. I don't know what to do. The words came out in a whisper, and I felt vulnerable, exposed before that image that, in some way, was me. I'm so confused. I can help you. Just trust me. He extended a hand, a gesture that felt both inviting and dangerous. The temptation to accept was strong, and I hesitated. If I accept you, what will happen to me? The doubt hung in the air, and the question seemed to resonate between us. You will be free, Clara. Free to create, to be who you truly are. But first, you need to let go. His smile was now encouraging, and I felt a wave of hope rising within me. But what if I get lost? What if I can't find my way back? Fear paralyzed me, and I looked into my reflection's eyes, seeking some answer. You won't get lost. I'll be here. I will always be here. And when you accept your true essence, you will find the freedom you seek. His voice was soft, almost hypnotic, and I felt my heart racing. What should I do? I stood before a precipice, facing the hardest choice of my life. Sacrifice myself for a part of me I didn't fully understand, or fight against a reflection that seemed to know more about me than I did? The internal battle was fierce, and I was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of feeling lost. Clara, you have only one chance. The choice is yours. The reflection's voice became an echo in my mind, and for a moment, I let myself be tempted by the idea of surrendering. I don't know if I can, I murmured, tears streaming down my face. Surrender felt so tempting, yet so risky. You can do this. Just take a step forward. The reflection smiled, and I realized I was in a dilemma. What did I really want? What did it mean to be free? I don't want to lose who I am, I said, my voice barely a whisper. But at the same time, a part of me desperately wanted that liberation. The desire to create, to be who I had always dreamed of being, was stronger than the fear. Then accept me, Clara. I am you. Together, we can do this. His smile was now a promise, and I knew the decision was in my hands. I need to think, I replied, feeling the weight of the decision. But the truth was I already knew the answer. I couldn't keep fighting against myself. It's okay, Clara. I'll be here, waiting for you. His voice was calm, almost reassuring, but I knew it was a dangerous game. With one last look at my reflection, I took a deep breath and stepped away from the mirror. The struggle wasn't over, but I knew the battle would be mine. I had to find a way to overcome this shadow, and for that, I needed to face not just the mirror, but also what was inside of me. And so, with a racing heart and a mind swirling with thoughts, I realized that the true struggle was only beginning. The atmosphere in the Victorian house felt dense, almost palpable, as I faced that polished surface that seemed to pulse like a heart. The reflection that once was a mere image had now become a terrifying enigma, an abyss opening before me. The smile of my reflection, once a familiar visage, now wore a malevolent expression, filled with a morbid pleasure at watching me hesitate. You won't dominate me, I muttered to myself, trying to find courage in the trembling voice echoing in my mind. Lucia had gone out to fetch some tools, and I was alone, staring at my own distorted self. The mirror, which I once admired as a work of art, now seemed like a portal to the unknown. Every time I moved, my reflection became more grotesque, as if it were feeding on my fear. Clara, the reflection whispered, its voice a mix of temptation and sarcasm. Why do you fight against what you are? Accept me, and I'll give you what you desire most. Desire? What do you know about desires? I retorted, my voice choked with a mix of anger and despair. You are nothing but an illusion, a shadow of what I could be. Illusion? I am the truth you refuse to see. Look around you, Clara. Your art, your creative block, it's all your fault. You hide behind a perfect facade, but I'm here to show you who you really are, he replied, his smile grotesquely widening. Get away from me. I screamed, but the revulsion I felt for my own reflection was contradictory. A part of me longed for that connection, a part that wanted to surrender to that force that promised liberation. But the freedom he offered felt like a different prison, a surrender to an identity I did not recognize. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, seeking a spark of strength. You won't control me, I affirmed, remembering the stories Lucia and I had read about Evelyn. The artist who lost herself in her own creation, trapped in a cycle of sacrifice and despair. I wouldn't follow the same path. I looked at the mirror again, and this time, instead of seeing a monster, I saw a part of me that had been rejected. You are just a part of me. A reflection of my fears and insecurities. Exactly, the reflection smiled, but not with malice. There was a sadness in his eyes, a recognition. I am everything you fear to be. But I am also everything you can be if you just allow yourself. Allow? I questioned, feeling an internal shake. You want me to sacrifice my essence? To become you? No, Clara. I want you to embrace the truth you hide. What you fear in me is actually what you fear in yourself. Your lack of confidence, your blocks, all of it can be overcome, he said, his voice now soft as a whisper. But how? I was lost, trapped between reason and emotion, between fear and hope. Confront me. Face everything you fear. Turn that fear into something beautiful, he suggested, and in that moment, something inside me ignited. An idea began to sprout, a spark that grew in intensity. Are you saying I should take all this pain and transform it into art? I asked, my mind filling with possibilities. Yes. Use your pain, your struggle. Paint the truth, Clara. Let it flow from you, he encouraged, and I felt a wave of determination swell within me. With a new focus, I turned to my canvas. I picked up the brush, the paint flowing through my hands like a river of emotions. I am not you. Hashtag 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 I am me, with all my flaws and insecurities. I will turn this into something beautiful. I declared, my voice now firm. As I painted, the connection with the mirror intensified. My reflection was now a spectator, observing with a smile that was no longer sinister but encouraging. Each brushstroke released a part of me that had long been trapped. The colors danced on the canvas, each representing a feeling, a struggle I was finally ready to face. That's right, Clara. Keep going. Show them who you really are. The reflection was now vibrant, almost pulsating with life. As I let my emotions flow, a new reality began to form on the canvas. I am more than my fears. I am an artist, a creator, I told myself, each word an act of rebellion against the shadow that had tried to consume me. And then, in a moment of pure clarity, I realized. The reflection was not an enemy. It was an aspect of myself that I needed to understand and accept. The connection that had once felt oppressive now transformed into a creative dialogue. You don't need me to be free, Clara. You just need to accept that I am a part of you. Together, we can create something incredible, the reflection said, and in that instant, I knew I had reached the climax of my struggle. Then let's create. I replied, and with one final stroke, I completed the painting. The image that emerged was powerful, full of raw emotions, a representation of my journey. The vibrant colors reflected not only my struggles but also the strength I had found. When I looked in the mirror again, I saw something incredible. The reflection was no longer a distorted image but a version of myself that had found peace. The smile forming on its lips was a reflection of freedom, of self-confidence. The mirror is no longer your prison. You are free, it said, and I felt a wave of warmth and satisfaction wash over me. With a decisive movement, I pointed at the mirror and, in an act of creation and destruction, let out a scream of liberation. The moment my scream echoed through the room, the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, each fragment shining like falling stars. It wasn't a defeat, it was a celebration of who I truly was. I am Clara, and I am free. I shouted as the light filled the space. The smile of my reflection transformed into an echo of my own liberation, a representation of the strength I had finally found within myself. The smile in the mirror, a young woman notices that, when she looks in the mirror, her reflection takes a few seconds to mimic her movements. When the reflection begins to smile without her doing so, she knows something is very wrong, and it's not just an illusion. The Victorian house now felt lighter, as if the trapped souls had found their way to the light. And I, finally at peace, knew that the struggle was just the beginning of a new journey, a journey where I could finally be the artist I had always dreamed of being.